I have several videos on the divorce process itself, on the mediation process. I've got one that talks about child support, various different subjects, but one area that people ask a lot about or are somewhat confused about is what we call the possession schedule or the possession order. And that part of your final decree of divorce and your parenting plan is the part that sets out who's going to have the children when and what are the conditions of each parent having time with the children. I have a lot of people come into mediation already having reached agreements about some things. And one of the things they frequently already have an agreement about is sharing time with the children. It is very common for a couple to come in and say, well, we've already got this worked out. We're going to share the children equally, and we're just going to share them based on what's going on, and whether somebody needs them for one reason or they need a parent for some reason. So we're just going to reach agreements about that. The very first case I ever mediated, the way I mediate now, the couple came in and they said, this is going to be your easiest mediation ever. And I'm like, well, it probably will be since this is my first, but I didn't tell them it was my first. But they said, we have agreed that we're going to share the children 50-50. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad you've reached that agreement. Tell me what 50-50 looks like for you. 4 hours later, we had the details of that 50-50. There are a lot of different ways you can draw up a possession schedule or a possession order. A lot of couples don't want it because they don't want somebody else dictating how much time they have with the children, or they don't want the other parent dictating. So let me put your mind at ease a little bit. I have several examples of the way people can reach agreements about the possession order itself. The reason it's important to have details in that possession order is because the day may come when you don't get along as well as you're getting along right now. That day will probably be when you have a significant other in your life, whether it's a new spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is. That person just being a part of your lives will cause change. Sometimes that change is good. Sometimes that other person facilitates a good relationship between you and your former spouse. But sometimes they don't. And they probably weren't divorced the way you're being divorced, and so they have a very different experience. And they're not going to understand your experience, and they're not going to understand that you and your spouse share the children by agreement. And when that happens and the fighting starts, you have to have a possession schedule, a parenting plan that is very specific so that a judge can decide who gets the children and when based on that parenting schedule. And that's what we do in divorce mediation centers. We help you turn that possession schedule, whatever it is, whether it's 50-50 or it's some other arrangement, into something as detailed as it needs to be for you to be guaranteed you're going to have that time with your children and nobody can take it away from you. So that is one of the differences we bring to the table. And I'm going to just use some words. You can look these up on the internet yourself and they will explain these to you. There's something called a standard possession order, and there was a time when judges just automatically put the standard possession order in. It doesn't work that way now. Very seldom does a judge order a quote-unquote standard possession order or standard possession schedule. There'll be some variation to it, but at divorce mediation centers, we put a possession schedule that can be as detailed as possible and still be what you want or what your children need. The very first paragraph of that possession schedule says, mother and father will share possession of the children at all times mutually agreeable. Failing agreement, this is what happens. And then that's where the schedule comes in. So if you two are getting along and you can share the children by agreement, wonderful. It's good for the kids. It's good for you. But if that day comes that you can't, then you have that default possession schedule that you can rely on to tell you what you're supposed to do and what a judge would make you do. I hope this is helpful to you. And if you want that kind of situation when you're going through the divorce process, come see us at Divorce Mediation Centers because we can help you fashion a possession schedule that will be flexible but definite enough to ensure that you get time with your children.